Welcome to Wingspan 743's first alumni panel. Before we begin, this stream is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel, so if you miss any part of it, you can go check it out. And if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat and we can answer them during our Q&A section. So we'll start with introductions. I'm Molly, and this is my third year on Wingspan, and I am a founding member of Wingspan, and I'm currently the head of strategy. So some facts about our team. We were established in 2018 in Viera, Florida. Our first game we played was Destination Deep Space, and our mission is to build a diverse student-led team where all members can discover their passions and gain experience through hands-on interactive learning. And our vision is to provide students the tools they need to change the world. So now we will introduce our panelists, starting with Kaitlyn.
Hi, my name's Kaitlyn Davey. I am an alumni of FTC Team Cubics 8221, and I also did VEX. Supersonic Sparks was my team. I have just recently graduated college, so I'm 5 years out of FTC, and just graduated from the University of Maryland with my BS in food science. My biggest involvement with FIRST right now is I'm one of the Maryland FTC head referees, and I just started working at McCormick & Company, the spice company, in the Material and Process Technology division as a food scientist. So as a food scientist, I work a lot with Frank's Red Hot, which was just recently bought by McCormick, as you can see in the bottom. I do research and development, so I design methods that help test the food, such as Red Hot, to help make the production of those foods more efficient and consistent. I work on basically only Frank's Red Hot, and my average day is about half in the lab or pilot plant developing methods or running tests, and the other half usually at a desk analyzing data, discussing meetings, presenting results, along those lines.
All right, thank you. And next we will be moving on to Rachel.
Hey guys, my name's Rachel. I'm originally from Wisconsin, and I got my degree in mechanical engineering from the Milwaukee School of Engineering. Right now I'm living in St. Louis, where I'm about to start my job for Eaton Corporation. I'm a participant in their leadership development program. During my time in FIRST, I did FTC. I was on team 5972, the Patronobots. Sorry, this is my cat. When I was in FTC, I mostly did mechanical stuff, a little bit of programming and some outreach. And I also was on FRC team 3132, the Thunder Down Under, working remotely as part of our chairman's team. My kind of time filler during the summer while I wasn't working was I've been working for a nonprofit called STEM to Stern. With that, I kind of been bringing the educational component in the form of First Lego League to that nonprofit. So I kind of have both of the jobs that I'm doing right now up here. So I'm going to be in a manufacturing engineering role at Eaton when I start next week. The leadership development program is pretty cool. It's 3 years long where you rotate every year. So you get to do a lot of different jobs, have a lot of different experiences. I will be responsible for monitoring the manufacturing processes that we do here and looking for ways to improve our system. But like I said, I'm not starting until next week, so I don't have too much job experience there yet. On the nonprofit side, I'm the STEM director for the nonprofit. So STEM to Stern combines competitive rowing, which is something I did in college, and STEM that we do in the form of First Lego League. So it's kind of cool to blend two things I'm pretty excited about. I'm responsible for creating the STEM education for each individual program. Right now we're in about 3 cities with looking to like consistently expand, and I'm on the board for that nonprofit. So that's something I'm also really excited about.
All right, thank you. And next we have Colton.
Hi, my name is Colton. I was on First Lego League team Fish in the Boat, and we competed in First Lego League for 5 years, and then the whole team moved from First Lego League to First Tech Challenge, or competed for another 3 or 4 years. I was on the team for 3 years, and then I aged out. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology from the University of Southern New Hampshire. That was a few years ago. I might get into my alternative schooling in one of these other questions. I'm now an applications engineering technician at Stratasys. Stratasys is one of the largest 3D printing companies in the world, founded in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, close to where I grew up. So that's a little about me. Before I go on to the next slide, what an application engineering does, or application engineer technician, I work with the applications engineers, and they're looking at how can we use 3D printing at different companies. So if they have manufacturing ways that can be improved using 3D printing, how can we assist that company in adopting 3D printing? So I'm working with them of how is this part going to be used? What is important? Do you need it right away, or do you need it in a way that's going to save money, or in a way that is the best quality we can, to make sure that the labs that we work in are producing benchmarks for these companies in the way that will drive sales. So I communicate with our machine operators to make sure they understand the priorities and what needs to be done for each request. I'm also developing and tracking or developing a website that is tracking all these requests and prints as they move throughout the lab. So as they move throughout the lab, the operators can scan them with QR code scanners on their phone, or use RFID scanners, and they move these RFID chips around the lab to change the status of each print. And that way we can track where things are slowing down and where every request is in the system.
All right, thank you. And our last panelist that we will be introducing is Jordan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Reese. I am a FRC graduate of Team 4143 Mars Wars out of Central Illinois. I mentored for Team 3928, Team Neutrino in Ames, Iowa, which is where I obtained my bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering at Iowa State. I currently work in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, as a platform systems engineer for fixed wing avionics. Fun facts about me: I can cut things with playing cards, and I can do a kip up. But more about my job. So platform systems, or a systems engineer in layman's term, is basically going to be a type of engineer that makes sure that everyone talks to everyone else correctly. What I do on a day-to-day basis is A, documentation, and B, I try to break software. Breaking the software is probably the more fun part of the job, because I can basically go out to a simulated or a built cockpit that we have in our labs, poke around on things, try to put the aircraft in situations that it shouldn't be in, or, you know, try to press a button a bunch of times and see if it overloads the system in some way. So my pre-COVID workflow was about the lab, which is an actual cockpit, for about half the day, and documentation the other day. Because I work aviation, we have a lot of rules that we have to abide by. We work closely with the FAA and other countries governing aviation's governments. And then post-COVID, I'm at home a lot, so doing a lot of documentation, remote work as much as I can. Every now and then I do have to go in. But down below are the aircraft I work on currently: French AWACS, the Chilean P3, USAF J-Stars, and the USAF KC-10 tanker. So I work avionics in all those aircraft.
All right, thank you. And now we will start our Q&A section. So the first question we have is, what's one positive or funny memory you have from your time in FIRST? And we will start with Kaitlyn.
Oh no. This is cheesy, but winning Worlds was pretty cool. I remember the moment when we were about to go to Alliance selection and realized that we were going to be picked by the first seed team, and it was like, whoa, this is really cool. So that's mine.
Okay, and next we'll go to Rachel.
So for me, the most positive memories that I took out of FIRST were actually not really, they were kind of at competitions, but not really. Something I mentioned is that I worked remotely with FRC Team 3132, and they're based in Sydney, Australia. And one year that I was on the team, they actually competed in Duluth, Minnesota. And I mean, if you've ever been to Minnesota or like the Midwest, it snows like when it's cold. But most of them, I think probably like 3/4 of them had never seen snow before. And it just happened to like snow one day that we were competing up there. And the whole day, like they were all so excited, so excited. And then after the award ceremony, we actually went outside with a couple of the teams from Minnesota and we had a snowball fight. And that was just a super, as someone who lives in Wisconsin, I never thought that like snow would be that exciting to people, but it was really cool to see them get to experience that.
Cool. And next we will move on to Colton.
I have a memory that shows how much of an impact you can make when you are on a first team. So when I was in, especially in high school, my entire team did a lot of outreach and we held events for the teams in our area at a time when Minnesota was growing really fast. Then after high school, I left the state for about 3 years. I came back, and right when I came back, I was inspecting robots at one of the first tournaments of the year. And there was a team I was inspecting the robot of, and the coach was kind of standing in the background. I inspected the robot, and the team left with the robot, and coach came up, and coach said, you look like this person that used to be around named Colton, and he did all this cool stuff, and so his teammates, and it really been, but you know, he moved away. So you kind of look like him. I think it should be called Colton 2. I think we're going to call you that. And I reached out and said, hi, I'm Colton. So it was a fun memory because that was me coming back to Minnesota. It's a fun memory to show that in high school or wherever you are in the program, when you are volunteering, you may not know the impact and the lasting memories you're making for everyone around you.
And next we will be moving on to Jordan.
So one, I guess it's more of a funny memory. I'm gonna preface this was no one was hurt and everyone is okay. But on our way home from Worlds, I think it was 2019, we actually got into an accident while on the coach bus. We're going maybe 15, 20 miles an hour, hit a ditch, and the whole bus got set at about a 45-degree angle. We had to have the firemen came and laddered everybody out of the tipped bus, and then we all went to the fire station at like midnight, 1 a.m. They had a bunch of old Scooby-Doo cassette tapes, and so we all kind of just stayed up waiting for the bus to get pulled out of the ditch, watching Scooby-Doo at 1 a.m. So that was a really interesting bonding experience for the whole team.
That's really cool. And okay, so our next question is, how did your experiences in FIRST help you prepare for college? And Colton will be answering that one first.
So I took a bit of an alternative path through college. I always wanted to become a mechanical engineer. So when I graduated high school, I went to the University of Minnesota, my dream school, to try to start mechanical engineering. I got into the college liberal arts. So I wasn't quite there, but I still had a spot to get in. If I focused on my schoolwork, which I did not, I continued going to all the tournaments that I could and mentoring teams, which was a blast. And classes are kind of a drain on me. So I actually ended up getting a job offer in New York to go work for High Technic, which makes sensors for Legos. I thought, oh, great, this will be fun. I'll combine my passions of engineering and robotics and technology and go do that. And I did. And there are a lot of experiences from that I would not have otherwise replaced. So I don't know if I would have done it differently in the future. As I was leaving the University of Minnesota, I met with a lot of my mentors from robotics. So you want to keep those contacts, because I met with them and consult with them. Hey, should I do this? And the biggest thing they said was, if you're going to do that, you have to have a 5-year plan to complete your degree. So I finished my degree online. A benefit was I was able to work and go to school at the same time. So I wasn't building up a lot of student loans, but also I never got my engineering degree. So what I would recommend is, if you seriously know what career path you want to take, and it requires a 4-year degree at a brick and mortar school, that first year in college, do not commit to anything first. Maybe go to a tournament to watch here and there, but don't mentor teams and sign up for all the tournaments. Really commit yourself.
Okay, thank you. And Kaitlyn will be answering next.
Yeah, what Colton said is really great. I did not mentor teams my first year. I really wanted to, but doing something that's like temporary volunteering is smart. So what FIRST helped me with through college, so many things, like being in FIRST and going through judging and making the engineering notebook and just the design process in general helped with so much. So like public speaking skills, presentation skills, documentation, how to plan a project. There's so many group projects now, and being in FIRST really helped me know how to delegate and how to give those jobs to other people and not just do all the work yourself in a group project. And then the biggest one for me that's more like people skills is all the connections. So like I went to University of Maryland, which is a huge school. Tons of FIRST people go there. So connecting with the people who were in FIRST once I got into college, joining like the FIRST Alumni Network and stuff, also helped me keep some similar friends as I was going into college, which helped a lot.
All right, that's super cool. So our next question is, when did you realize that what you wanted to do did FIRST have an impact on that decision? And Rachel will be answering first.
So I think my answer is kind of in two parts. So I grew up in FLL. Geez, I'm sorry. My cat really likes when I talk. Yeah, so I grew up in FLL, and kind of from the time I started doing that, people kind of started floating like, oh, you could be good at engineering. And it wasn't until I was a freshman in high school when I started FTC and we actually started building like a real robot with like real stuff, where I was like, oh, this could be something I could be good at. You know, I was kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. You know, I was like, all right, mechanical engineering, that's what everybody's saying. Sure, whatever, let me go for it. So I rode that wave all the way through high school. And when I got to college, kind of similar to Colton, I really had a tough time my freshman year. I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And my sophomore year was kind of the second coming of what I realized what I wanted to do. And what I realized is that you can do anything with an engineering degree. Like, you don't have to go sit at a desk and do CAD all day. And the second that I kind of came to terms with the fact that it didn't really matter what my grades were, it didn't really matter if I loved what I was doing right in that second, that kind of helped me realize that I wanted to do something a little bit more creative relating to engineering and something a little bit more management-y. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. But I think that my experience in FIRST, it helped me to diversify the skills that I had. So yes, I was developing those technical skills, but I was also like accidentally becoming a good public speaker and like making connections with people. So that kind of worked out really well. So yeah,
All right.
that did impact.
And next, Colton will be answering this question.
When I was younger, I always wanted to build stuff, and that was before FIRST. My mom would say, well, I want to be an engineer. I say, no, I don't want to go drive trains. I want to build stuff. So that was ingrained in me pretty young. And through robotics, I was always very hands-on with the robot, but getting my understanding different areas of it as well. And especially, and I didn't know how to program very well during my years in a FIRST team, but I knew how to communicate with the programmers. So there's this introduction, communicating with programmers as to how to use critical thinking and logic in your head of if this, then that, or switch statements, or, you know, I'm going to control this and tell it to do this thing, but it doesn't actually mean that that happened. So you're going to check to make sure it happened. So with that whole thing, it's a good experience or leg to get into understanding programming, which I think is a good life skill for everyone to have. But then as I got into college, I started taking more programming classes. I went to work for a robotics company. I started doing programming tutorials. Today, I don't build much, but I use programming every day at work. So there's a good transition there in FIRST. I recommend get kind of involved with all the areas. Rachel has a great point, especially mechanical engineering degrees. They can be used for a wide variety of things. But now I'm amazed with what you can build using programming because you don't need the cost of any materials and you don't need any tools except for what you can download on your computer.
Okay, and thank you. So our next question is, what do you like the most about your job and what do you like the least? And Jordan will be answering this first.
So, what I like most about my job is that every day is kind of a bit different than the last. I mean, pre-COVID, obviously. I always came into work with a different set of problems, whether it be, oh, overnight this broke, we need to check it out, or somebody from Boeing or Lockheed Martin saying this isn't working on the aircraft. We have to get somebody to look at it in the lab and see why it's broken. So that's really interesting. I'm not really a desk junkie outside of doing some documentation. But the part I like least is probably all the stuff they don't tell you about engineering. And that is a lot of documentation does have to happen. There's a lot of reviewing. So if you change a document or you change some sort of code, that's got to go into a review process where your peers look at it and tell you if you're right or wrong or if they approve of it. And then there's not a whole lot of, at least in my industry, not a whole lot of like new designing going on unless you're on the foreground of R&D. A lot of it is taking what we know works and kind of molding it to fit what other customers want. So it's not super flashy all the time. And I think some of the pitfalls that fall into engineering students is like, oh yeah, I get to be on the cutting edge designing the brand new airplane or this and that. And in reality, it's a lot of making sure everyone's safe first. Safety is always the first priority in engineering.
Okay, cool. And next we have Kaitlyn.
So my favorite part of my job is probably getting a big data set and analyzing it and getting some like actual thing that is useful out of it. So like my daily life is you run a bunch of tests, you get a lot of numbers, and then you try to make something that makes sense out of them. And then from that, you make an improvement or you make a change to the process. So when you get one of those things that really makes sense and actually helps change the process, so some important data, it's great. What I don't like about my job as much as it takes a long time to get that amount of data and to get all that information. And you have to run a lot of tests to get there. So yes, you have this great big, cool, I got to make this change at the end, but it takes a really long time to get there. And as a sometimes impatient person, it can be a little slow, but the end is definitely worth it.
Okay, so our next question is, how do you maintain connections? Wait, sorry, my bad. Our next question is, did your first experience help you get into a good college, or did colleges help like look for your first being in FIRST?
So I will say going to a pretty well-known school in the Midwest, Iowa State, being in FIRST definitely helps a little bit, but what I think it would help with more is staying committed to that school. College is hard, and I know a lot of the first kids I met at school or some of the high schoolers I mentored, they had a very determined attitude, and what that's going to get you really far in college. So I think there are a lot of factors that go into applying for a school, and FIRST offers a lot of scholarships, so apply. But that first attitude that you'll develop on a team will help you succeed through that. I think more than it would be getting into it initially.
All right. Our next question is, how do you maintain connections once you leave your state?
So this is something that I can speak to because I just recently graduated from college and I moved 500 miles away from all my friends. Or maybe not that much, maybe like 250. Either way, it's a really long ways, and for my whole family. And that was a big jump for me personally, but luckily because of the time I spent in FIRST, I do have a lot of experience. Something I was going to touch on a little bit later is the relationships that you make with people are really important. And that's something that I learned in FIRST. And it's not that hard to like maintain casual relationships, but it's really hard to maintain close relationships. So I think being honest with yourself about the like level of commitment you're willing to have with other people is important. I have so many friends who I met through FIRST, and I would have never met them any other way, who are some of my closest friends in the whole world. And that's crazy that something like FIRST was able to bring us together. But the true answer to this question is it takes commitment from both people. It's not one person reaching out, it's both people committed to always, maintaining that friendship and maintaining that relationship.
All right. So our next question is, outside of FIRST competitions, what other opportunities in FIRST help you become the person you are today? And Colton will be answering that one first.
Sure. I want to add one thing about Rachel was saying, and maintaining those connections is very important, especially those people that mean a lot to you. But also, wherever you go in the world, there's one of two things. There's either a FIRST community and FIRST teams there that you can join. So I went out to New York and they needed a head referee for FIRST League League. I said, great. I went to Miami. They needed someone to manage their league. I said, okay. I come back and there's still FIRST in Minnesota. Or if there's not FIRST teams, there is a way to make FIRST teams and a FIRST community wherever you go if they're not there already. So there's always one of those two things to make more connections. Outside of FIRST competitions. So not competing or being on a team outside of those two things that really helped shape me. One was sponsorship pitches, which helps you ask for something that's big without your knees shaking out from underneath you. I think that everyone should be involved in sponsorship pitches. I know that on really big teams, you don't need everyone to go out and do it maybe, but do volunteer to do that because it's a worthwhile experience. And then also emceeing or announcing. So emceeing at tournaments is one of my favorite things to do, not as my team, but volunteering at tournaments and getting that public speaking and kind of getting the butterflies out of your system that way and being confident so you can then talk to people at college or talk to your coworkers, talk to your the president of your company someday about sponsoring a FIRST team or FIRST organization. It's a great skill to have.
All right, and Rachel will also be answering this question.
So one of the biggest things I took away outside of the competitions, and I would argue that I actually took more away from this than I did from the competitions, is the outreach. As I spoke to before, STEM education is something that's like personally extremely important to me. And I firsthand got to see the value of STEM education through FIRST and why it's important that it should be accessible to everyone and that it shouldn't be limited to affluent areas. And that's something that I didn't really realize I was learning until I was in college and didn't live in an affluent area. That was really powerful to learn that. And then, as I mentioned before, the relationships with other people. The relationships you form through FIRST are really unmatched with anything else I've ever experienced in my life. So.
All right, and then Kaitlyn.
Yeah, definitely agree with what both of them said. And my answer is kind of similar. Outside of competitions, like as a team, we did so much of like running a STEM camp for kids, similar to what Rachel said, like teaching kids who wouldn't normally get STEM education, a good STEM education. I'm from a very rural area that has, I don't think they even had FLL teams in public schools until like 2 or 3 years ago. So showing those kids what STEM is, girls and boys, all of the above, and just getting them exposed to it. And then now, like as a college, well, I'm not a college student anymore, as a, I guess, young professional, I can keep doing that, mentoring other teams. So the education part is so important and you really get to do a lot of that in FIRST. So take advantage of that if you can.
All right, thank you. And our next question is, for those of you who are mentors, how does being a mentor compare to being a member of a FIRST team? And Jordan will answer this first.
So I mentored an FRC team for a little over 2 years while I was going to school, and like it is a very different dynamic because going into it early, as you get further on in your college career, you're going to start to gain more knowledge, and you're going to start to see some of those problems you used to have aren't necessarily problems anymore, and so you may see a solution before your students do, and the first thing you need to do is never say anything and kind of just let them find their own path and let them make the decisions. A lot of times they may have said, oh, we're going to do this. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea. And you know what? I said, yeah, let's do it. And we go figure it out, and we may build a prototype, we may experiment on something, and it fails, and it's a good learning experience for them. And so I think the biggest difference is you're no longer the person that is creating the solutions for the game, for the sponsors. You're kind of there to help support the students in making their own decisions, and be there if, you know, if something does absolutely fall apart, then you can be there as a safety net just in case.
All right, and then Rachel.
So I have a lot of experience mentoring, I don't know a nice way, teams that do not have any experience and they don't have the resources to be really good. Those are the teams that I have mentored. They're mostly in inner city Milwaukee. Most come from schools with absolutely no like structure to have STEM programs. So I can really second what Jordan said. You know, kids that are just trying this for the first time don't always have ideas that you would come up with as like someone getting your engineering degree. So that was a really challenging thing for me to personally overcome. But the value that you get from mentoring is really nothing like the experience that you have in FIRST. And it took me a long time to kind of separate myself from being a student and being a mentor. But once you kind of get over that bump a little bit, it feels really good because you're like, okay, I actually feel like I'm making a difference. And you also learn not to take yourself that seriously. And that was the biggest thing that I had to learn is like, I'm not anything to these kids. They don't really care that much about my opinion. I'm just here to help them. And what they do is for them. It's not for me.
Okay, and then finally we have Colton.
I think the key difference is that you are, as a mentor, trying to ask the right questions. So kind of what Jordan was hinting at is you're not coming up with the solutions or seeing it before they can. You are trying to figure out how to ask the right questions to keep them on track and thinking about the right thing, and then listening to what they have to say. Always need another listener. Oftentimes it's hard to get your mind around that you're not, let's say, your first year out, the first year that you can mentor teams because you're graduate from high school. You're not a whole year older than your team. You're only 3 months older than your team because the students who you were competing alongside of only 3 months ago, you are now considered a mentor and they are still students. So what I recommend, at least for that first and second year outside of high school, is find a team that has the potential and the drive that your team had. Maybe they don't have the resources or the experience, and you can help bring that to them. But find a team that wants to put in the time commitment that you are kind of looking for, so that you can work well with that team.
Okay, and our next question is, were you a leader on your team? What advice do you have for students who are leaders on their team? And Kaitlyn will be answering this first.
So yes, I was probably almost always the leader on my team, just kind of ended up in that role. I was on very small teams that were usually run out of my family's house. So I was kind of the one leading a lot of the decision making. But in a general advice for people who are either leaders or want to be leaders, first of all, I think anyone can become a leader, even if you don't think you're a super like outgoing or assertive person. I am neither of those things, yet I can still lead. And sometimes when you have qualities like maybe being a little more introverted, in high school is the perfect time to practice being more assertive, to practice getting those leadership skills. Because once you're in a job, your leadership skills are being judged a bit more and you're getting paid based on how good your leadership skills are. In high school, you can try anything. You can run some cool team building activities with your robotics team. You can basically say, I want to lead this activity, and go for it. Now is your time to just kind of try stuff. And it's okay if it doesn't work. It's your team, they'll accept it. But now's your time to try all the cool stuff.
All right, and then next we have Jordan.
So my senior year of high school, I was on a small team of 4 with 3 other seniors called the Galactic Council, because we were Mars Wars. And I think the biggest thing I can say, if you are a leader or want to be a leader, the first thing you should do is lead by example. Don't tell somebody to do something or ask somebody to do something and not expect yourself to hold you to that standard. And the second thing is like get input. Don't be afraid to ask other people's opinions, and have some communication going on. You never want to, as a leader, you never want to seem like you're, the untouchable CEO or, president or whatever. You want to be very involved with who you're leading's live, if that makes any sense.
I asked Jordan and Kaitlyn, do you guys was there a written out leadership role on your teams, or was a impromptu leading by example, or you kind of rose to the occasion in that occasion?
So mine was, it was kind of a rise to the occasion. The mentors saw that we hadn't had this before. So the mentors saw that this group of seniors is like, okay, we're going to start to put you guys in charge of things. And then we each got our own little area of the team that we kind of delegated to. So I was mechanical.
Ours was very similar with a small team. At least I found there tends to not be as much of a written rule. It's kind of, I like hardware and software better, so I'm going to kind of lead in these areas, and someone else leads in the different areas. Ours was very organic. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And our next question is, what's the biggest thing you took or even still take away from FIRST? And Rachel will be answering that first.
So I have two of my biggest takeaways. And the first one is that you can never miss an opportunity to network. When I think about, so when I competed was in the time of one world championship, and like those were the best days because everyone was in one place. And when I think about where all the people that were in those spaces are now, it's crazy. Like the kids that you are competing alongside of, they're going to work at SpaceX, they're going to work at Ford, they're going to work at Tesla, they're going to work at an avionics company like Jordan, they're going to work at McCormick like Kaitlyn, they're going to work at Stratasys. There's all these things. And when you're in high school, you don't really think about that. Like when I'm standing across, controlling my robot, I'm not like, oh, that guy, yeah, he's going to be a lead engineer at SpaceX in 10 years. I'm not thinking about that, but you should. Take the time to make connections, at least like friend them on Facebook, add them on LinkedIn, remember their name, because if in 10 years you want to work at Boeing or you want to work at SpaceX and you want to work for one of those companies, then you can be like, hey, remember this one time when we did this thing together? And they're probably going to be like, yeah. And that's a really, really powerful connection to be able to form with people. Like I have so many friends on Facebook that I never, ever have had a personal conversation with, but I know what they're doing because I friended them when I was 15 and I thought their robot was cool. Like take those risks and try to like make those connections with people. And then the second takeaway that I have from FIRST is that I really needed to not take myself so seriously. And I know that this advice does not fit to every single type of FIRST person. But I just remember I spent so much time emotionally investing in my team and the result of a competition and who won what award. And I should not have done that. I think it detracted from my experience. And I think that it hyped up my anxiety a little too much. And I think if I had just chilled out and been like, whatever, I don't care if I make it to the next competition, I don't care who wins, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. And I know that's very hard advice and it's not super realistic because obviously you do care, you worked really hard, but don't take yourself so seriously because everyone is working as hard as you. And in 5 years, it doesn't really matter that Fish in the Boat won the world championship and I never did. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not a big deal. It feels bad at the time, but like, who cares? They're your friends, so cheer for them.
All right, thank you. And Jordan will be answering next.
So I guess the first one I want to talk to is sort of the atmosphere that I got from FIRST and then coming out. First competitions and my first team was pretty much the only place in high school I felt like I could be myself and not experience any judgment. And so that really helped me to figure out who I wanted to be as a person and take that character and move it forward going into college and my professional career. And the other one I want to talk to is I touched on it briefly earlier, but it's the determination of the majority of FIRST students I've come across. Every day is going to be a problem, and you're going to have to overcome something that day. And the way that FIRST allows you to practice your problem solving skills is a huge benefit going forward, whether that's a group project in college or finances later on in life or what have you. I think the tools that FIRST provides you by having you solve what seem to be unsurmountable problems gives you that nice tool that you can take to your everyday life.
All right, thank you. And Colton will be answering next.
I think something that I slowly figured out through the FIRST program and then really grabbed onto it and used it at different jobs after FIRST and also at volunteering opportunities outside of FIRST is to enable other people. If you see someone who wants to get involved or doesn't, maybe they don't even look like they want to get involved or don't look like they know how to get involved, don't look like they're putting in the time. It might be that they aren't enabled. They don't have the tools. They don't have the feeling of being welcomed and the feeling of being able to work on the thing that's going on, or they don't understand it because maybe they had some other commitment. So assume that positive intent, that person wants to be involved as everyone else, that they want to be as involved as you want them to be involved, but they need the tools to do so. So you need to look at, what's this missing link? What's this, the piece of information you need to give them, or sometimes it's a physical tool or something to get the job done, and they can hit the ground running, and it really affects your whole team or your whole volunteer group, your whole team at work. So enable other people and assume that positive intent. Don't assume that they're coming in and they were slacking off before and that's why they're late.
All right, and finally we have Kaitlyn.
Wow, I don't know if I can add on to this. Great 3 points. I'll take a twist here. I haven't gotten to talk about reffing yet. So like after coming out of FIRST and then reffing a bunch and seeing the competitions from the other side, it's so different as a referee. As a student, that is your, like Rachel said, that is your life. You spend so much time. I remember how many hours I spent working on that robot. And seeing from the other side as a referee, the result of that and like seeing what kids put in is amazing. And it's really cool to see that determination. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yes, it's very impressive to see kind of what kids are coming up with. Like as a ref, you'll see things were different back when I was in FGC. There was different electronics, different things. You weren't allowed to use as many different parts. And to really just see what kids are coming up with constantly, that robots are constantly changing, they're constantly getting better. All of the ideas and the communication skills just keep getting better and better. So it's really cool to see that. And I like how FIRST is definitely helping you all improve those skills.
All right, and our next question is, what would you recommend for teams trying to meet during COVID or virtually? Jordan will be answering this one.
So I've been doing virtual work since March, and company tells me I'm probably going to be doing it until March. So a couple things, a couple pieces of advice, getting used to it. At first, it's hard. It's going to be very different, very difficult. Communication's going to kind of fall through because you're not getting all of the different dynamics you get when you're talking face-to-face with engineers. So the first thing I would say is make sure you're constantly, if you're texting or emailing, make sure you're constantly reading over that and making sure it's not like can be interpreted in some weird way. That'll help you with your written communication a lot. Second thing, if you have the ability, make a little space, whether it's a little spot on your desk or a part of your room that is your FRC space or your FTC space or whatever, because trying to do engineering at my dining room table while my dog is running around, that's not very productive. But having my own space that I know I go to that space for work really helps me feel like I'm not necessarily all virtual. And don't be afraid to call somebody, whether it's a Zoom call, a Hangouts, Snapchat, whatever tools you've got. Don't be afraid to call and talk face to face. You get so much more information with face-to-face communication than you do via text message.
All right, thank you. And Rachel will also be answering this question.
So as I mentioned, I actually did I participated in FRC remotely, and that was a super unique experience at the time. And it's funny to kind of like watch it shift to mostly being virtually. But I can definitely echo all the things that Jordan has said. And obviously when I was doing chairman's work, it was a lot different than trying to do technical engineering work, but schedule a time, make it repeating, and just stick to it. Like, it's not that hard to consistently have virtual meetings just the same way that you would have in-person meetings. You know, you say, okay, today, 7 to 8, we're having this team meet. Put it in your calendar and just write it down. It's not challenging. People do it at work. You have to do it at school. Make your team make it part of your routine, make it part of the habit, and it goes really easily.
All right, thank you. And our next question is, what encouraged you to join your first robotics team? And Colton will be answering this.
So I had started First League in 5th grade, and there's a systems engineer from Lockheed Martin who wanted to start a team. Didn't have any students yet, so he had brought a First League robot and a table to our school's orientation, just kind of in the hallway, everyone walking by. So he got the students' interest with his cool Lego robot that's going around the table, and we all love Legos, and it was moving, so super cool. And he was, again, the parents attracted with the promise of research projects and scholarships and getting students interested in technology and learning how to program and going on to college. So you had both things there, and you draw on the students and the parents from different angles. So the robot is a attention grabber, and it is a tool for a bunch of other stuff that is not actually about robots. That's a secret of FIRST. So being on a team, I highly recommend go do that sort of thing and get very young students engaged in technology. What I found is that before 7th grade or 6th grade or 5th grade, that's kind of where the students are deciding STEM is really cool or STEM is kind of gross and has boys and cooties around it. So we gotta get them engaged at a younger age.
All right, thank you. And Kaitlyn will also be answering this.
I have kind of an atypical answer for this. I did a lot of different STEM challenges growing up, from like 1st grade on, little competitions at like the Baltimore Museum of Industry, and they were all like different physics related challenges. And I didn't really realize that I was doing STEM. It was kind of just natural to me. And then I am the youngest of 3 kids. So my siblings had been doing robotics for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I always went to competitions. I was the field resetter at Vex Worlds way back in, 2011. But I didn't really want to do it. And then my family said, we're going to start an FTC team. They were like, do you want to do it? And I was like, well, I don't think I do engineering. But then once I joined, I realized that I really like building. I really like designing. I really like the concepts behind all of it. I just didn't know that I wanted to do engineering per se. So that's my atypical version.
All right, thank you. And now for our final question. What are your last thoughts, advice, and last words? And we will be starting with Kaitlyn again. Sorry.
If I don't say this, my other Maryland FTC head referees will be mad at me. So my statement is make sure to volunteer. I've learned so much after being out of FIRST from volunteering, mentoring other teams. And you don't, like everyone has said, don't commit your entire life to it, but go volunteer, go give back to the people that helped you get to where you are now. Yeah, so go volunteer, go referee. I'm partial, but.
All right, thank you. And then next, Rachel.
So I'm just going to kind of put a fine point on something I've talked about a few times, and that's the relationships. I really cannot stress how important it is to take this little high school time and put an emphasis on getting to know as many people as you can. If you asked me 4 years ago if I thought I would be at this point in my life right now, the answer is no. So much happens in a year, and it gets a lot harder to meet so many different people once you're not like constantly being thrown in a room with them a couple times a year. Like the experience that you have is so unique in FIRST, and it's something that if you take the time to foster those relationships now, you'll be able to always fall back on them for the rest of your life. And I can echo Kaitlyn's sentiment to going back to volunteer, you know, volunteering is a whole brand new network of adults with real jobs, with real connections, with the ability to get you a job interview when you're in college if you want an internship, with the ability to get you a job interview if you're about to graduate. Just the volunteer base for FIRST is just as stacked as the kids who are going to do the same thing one day. So take the time to invest in yourself now, build those relationships, and you will not regret it when you're where I am now. So
All right. Thank you. And next, Colton.
I think this is something I may have realized or learned through listening to the other presenters in this call, but imagine the amount of time and effort and passion that you put into building this robot that zooms around on a field and collects things to throw them at something and raise some points. Imagine how much energy that takes from you. If you can now, after high school or during high school, if you need some classes to boost, after high school, take all that passion and direct it to the next thing, which maybe that's your undergraduate degree, or maybe that is your next job, or maybe it's a nonprofit, or whatever it is. If you can take all that passion and redirect it towards your next goal, I think that is the key. It's not taking all these lessons and the trivial knowledge you understand, or how to properly use a certain type of tool. It is this passion and drive that you've come to for the particular robot or team, and how do you leverage that?
All right, thank you so much. And finally, we have Jordan.
All right, so I guess the first piece of advice after going through undergrad, things are going to get hard, or things are hard, but the first thing you should do is take a deep breath. You are almost always equipped to handle the hand you're dealt. So take a deep breath, and you have the tools at your disposal to get through that problem. The second thing I want to say, it's kind of touching on what Colton was saying, is like always keep learning. FIRST is an environment full of new things to learn. I mean, even transitioning between sub teams from mechanical all the way to marketing or sponsorship, there's so much information there that you can pick up on. But once you graduate, that outlet may not be there anymore. So try to create yourself fun little hobbies. Maybe you're like, man, I wonder what it's like to do. Don't wonder, actually do it. Try to come up with new things to make yourself learn, because the day you stop learning, things get really uninteresting.
All right, thank you so much. And before we end the stream, I wanted to go over some upcoming events that Wingspan has. So during the months of October and November, Wingspan will be streaming a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference through Twitch. Our first event will be on October 17th, and we will be focusing on LGBTQ+ and how you can be more inclusive within your team. If you want more information, make sure you go follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Like I said earlier in the presentation, this stream will be on our YouTube channel soon, as well as the conference we had last week regarding STEM careers. And then finally, thank you so much for all coming. I would like to thank our amazing panelists for the wonderful job they did today. And shout out to our mechanical lead, Zach, for recording and streaming today's panel. Thank you to Sid, our operations lead, for organizing and leading this event. Thank you to our mentor, Erin, for finding us such amazing panelists and bringing them all together. And finally, thank you for everyone who's watching. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. So that concludes the FIRST Alumni Panel. Thank you so much.